The day I was discharged from the hospital, my husband didn't come to pick me up. Instead, my mother-in-law sent me a photo of herself standing in front of our house, holding a brand new set of keys. The message underneath contained just one sentence. From today on, this house belongs to me. Pack your things and leave. I stared at the string for a long time, not because I was shocked that she wanted to throw me out of my old house, but because I knew something. Neither she nor my husband knew. That house has never been my husband's name, and 2 days later, they were planning to hold a party right there, in the living room, to announce to the entire family that my mother-in-law has finally gotten the house she deserved. I went anyway, but I didn't go there to beg them to let me stay. I went with a proud envelope, a stack of documents nearly an inch thick, and a man my husband definitely did not want to see. My name is Linh. I have been married 2 months for almost 6 years. From the outside, outline looked pretty stable. Men worked as a sales manager for a medical equipment company. He earned good money, dressed well, and knew exactly how to charm people. I worked as a freelance interior designer. 6 days later, after we got married, we moved into a 2-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was the first place that ever made me feel like I truly had a family of my own. I personally stole every time in the kitchen. I designed the peeling bookshelf that stretched across the living room's wall. In the front yard stood a small star tree my father planted on the exact days we moved. I used to think I would live there for a very long time. My mistakes for believing months felt the same way. Mun's mother, Miss Hunt, has never lied me. She didn't scream at me or cause things in where outsiders could easily notice. She was more subtle than that. Every time she visited, she would look around the house and say things like, "This place is so big for just the 2 of you. What a waste!" Or whenever I bought something new, "How much does a girl like you even make to spend money like this?" But if I bought a watch that cost more than $1,000, she would smile and say, "A man needs to look the part when he's going out." At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was just the usual tension between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Until about a year ago, Mun started changing. He suddenly became interested in the house document. Where do I keep the properties paper again? Why don't I have them? We married. Why are you the ones managing all the assets? I thought it was Jane. From the day we moved in, he had never cared about any of that. I asked him, "Why do we need them?" Mun smiled. "No reasons, just asking." I didn't think much of it. That was my second mistake. About 4 months before everything happened, Mun started having trouble at work. He never explained exactly what was going on. He only said the company were restructuring. Then he asked to borrow 150 million Vietnamese dong from me. He said he needed the money to invest with a friend who were importing medical equipment. I didn't immediately agree. Not because I didn't trust my husband, but because man knew almost nothing about running his own business. He got angry. For the first time in years, Mun slammed his hands down on the table. "I'm your husband. I'm asking to borrow money from you, not begging some stranger." I said nothing. In the end, I gave him 80 million. 2 months later, I discovered the money has never been used to import anything. Mun has given it to his mother. Miss Hunt was heavily in debt after investing in a land deal with someone he knew. When I confronted him, my answer as casually as if it were nothing. "My mothers were in trouble, So I helped her. What's wrong with that? Then why did you lie to me? Because I knew you wouldn't agree. The sentence made my blood run cold. Not because of the money, but because of the way he said it. He didn't think he had done anything wrong. He simply saw me as an obstacle. From the days on, our marriage began to crack. But I still had no idea that was behind my back. Mun and his mother were already working on another plane. 3 days later, I was hospitalized. A sudden, severe abdominal pain sent me into emergency surgery. It wasn't life-threatening, but I had to stay in the hospital for 6 days. Mun stayed with me for the first 2. On the 3rd day, he said something has come up at work. On the 4th, he stopped by for maybe 10 minutes. On the 5th day, my mother stayed with me all day. Mun has practically disappeared. I still thought he was busy. Until the afternoon of the 6th day, a neighbor named Miss Lang called me. His voice sounded hesitant. Lin, can I ask you something? It's a little strange. Yes? Did you sell your house? I said straight up in the hospital bed. Sell what? This morning I saw some people taking measurements. Your mother-in-law says the house has been transferred to her. For a second, I thought I had misheard her. I commented immediately. He didn't answer. I called again and again. On the 5th call, he finally picked up. What is it? I asked him directly. What are you doing with the house? There was silence on the other end for about 3 seconds. Desmond sighed. You're in the hospital? Just read. I asked you what you doing with the house. He didn't answer. I could hear his mother's voice in the background. Desmond said, I'm transferring it to Mom. For the 2nd time that day, I thought I had heard something wrong. What did you just say? I'm doing the paperwork to put the house in Mom's name. Do you even hear yourself? That's when his tongue changed. He stopped avoiding the question. Lin, Mom lost all on her money. She needs a stable asset. The house will still belong to the family anyway. I laughed. I actually laughed. Maybe it's because my body didn't know how else to react. And me? You're my wife. Then why are you doing this? Why I'm in the hospital? Mun went quiet. Then he said something I still remember word for word. Because if you were home, you make everything complicated. And that's where it. There was no misunderstandings anymore. It wasn't just about a difficult mother-in-law. My husband has deliberately waited until I was at my wicket to take the helm his belief belonged to us and hand it over to his mother. But the interesting part was he still has no ideas how badly he had miscalculated. I stopped arguing. I simply said, Fine. Mun said surprised. Fine what? Do whatever you want. Then I hung up. My mother was sitting beside the bed. She looked at me. What are you going to do? I said, I need to call Dad. That was the first call Mun knew nothing about. And that's when the real story began. There was something I had never told my husband's family. The house we lived in had originally belonged to my father. 2 years earlier, he had bought the land. After I got married, he let us use it to build a house. Mun contributes around $600 million. I contribute more than $700 million. My father had paid for the finishing work. But once the house was complete, My father never transferred ownership of the lands to us. He once told me, I'm not keeping it because I'm greedy. I'm keeping it because I want you to have one thing no one can take from you. If your life ever changed. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. When barely care. All he knew was that we were allowed to live there indefinitely. When we talk to other people, we casually refer to it as our house. And over time, I think men start believing Israelis were hit. But legally, the land's due rights were still entirely my father's name. And the ownership documents for the house itself had also been registered under my father once constructions were complete. Mun had never bothered to read any paperwork carefully. He had seen an old photocopy in our filing cabinet and simply assumed it was marital property. But there was still one problem. If Mun didn't own the house, how could he possibly transfer it to his mother? I want to know it too. And the answer led us to the first major twist. The next morning, my father called the lawyer who has originally had our families handle the property document. His name was Kai. After hearing the entire story, Mr. Kai asked me to send him every document Man has asked me to sign over the previous 6 months. I searched through my emails. There were one set of paper Man has once told me were for updating residency information and property insurance. I had signed into places. Fortunately, I have a habit of photographing every document I sign. Mr. Kai reviewed them for about 10 minutes. Then he called me back. Linh, do you remember giving manpower of attorneys or anything? No. Did you sign anything without reading it carefully? I went silent. Yes. 3 months earlier, Man had brought home a stack of paperwork. He pointed to my place. Just one document. I'm updating the long file. I read the first page. Nothing seemed directly related to me. So I signed where he indicated. Mr. Kai said, it is possible that using your signature to create a different set of documents. My heart started pounding. You mean they forget document? I'm not making that conclusion yet, but we need to investigate. That afternoon, Mr. Kai discovered something strange. Man had not actually completed any ownership transfer. He has only submitted an application attempting to prove that he has legal rights to the house. And inside that file were an agreement stating that my father has given the house to Mun and me 2 years earlier, but my father has never signed such a document. The signature were fake. I sat there starting at the scanned copy on my screen, and for the first time, I realized this were no longer just a family dispute. Someone has forgot my father's signature. I called Mun, but I didn't ask him about the forged document. I want to know how far he was willing to lie. Is the house transfer finished yet? He answered immediately. Almost. Does my dad need to sign anything? Mun paused for a second. No, that's been on handled before. Are you sure? Stop worrying about it. Then he added, Mom wants to have a family dinner this weekend. Why? She wants to announce a few things. I understood immediately. Miss Hunt wants to publicly celebrate her victory. 2 hours later, she called me herself. Linh. Her voice so sweet, I almost laughed. Come home this weekend? What for, Mom? A few ladies are coming. I want to clear something up. About the house? She paused before answering. Yes, Mun probably told you already. It will be more convenient if the house is in my name. You two are young. You can always earn more money. I'm old. I need stability. I asked, then where am I supposed to live? She answered as naturally as if she were discussing the weather. You and Mun can rent an apartment for a few years. It's for a house we have spent more than $1 billion building. I had designed every room, and she was telling me I could simply go rent somewhere else. I asked, what if I don't agree? Her voice turned cold. It won't change anything. Then she delivered her final line. The paperwork is already done. I looked across the room at my father. He had heard the entire con. When I hung up, he said only, Dan, I'm coming with you this weekend. I shook my head. Not yet. He looked at me. Why? I said, I want them to say everything first. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Mun still didn't come. My mother picked me up and took me back to my parents' house. That evening, Mun texted me. Don't make a scene in front of the relative. Mom has been under a lot of stress. I read the message again and again. Not one question about how I'm feeling. Not one apology. Just one request. Don't embarrass his mother. I replied, I understand. And from that moment on, Mun thought he has won. Saturday afternoon, I returned to the house. There were about 18 people in the living room. Aunt, uncle, cousin, and a few close friends of Miss Han. Food covered the table. There were even a bottle of wine. Miss Han was wearing a red dress I had given her for her birthday. When I walked in, the conversation died for a few seconds. She looked at me up and down. You feeling better? Yes. Sit down. I looked around. Our wedding photo, which has always stood on the shelf, was gone. In its place was an old family photo of Mun's family. I wasn't in it. I said nothing. About 20 minutes later, Miss Han stood up. She raised her glass. I invite everyone here today because I have some good news. Mun sat beside her. He wouldn't look at me. She continued. After all these years of hardship, Mun has finally decided to transfer his house to me. A few people clapped. Someone said, what a devoted son. Miss Han smiled. Honestly, I didn't ask for anything, but he insists that if the properties were in his mother's name, the whole family would feel more secure. I remained silent. Then one of the aunts turned to me. Linh, you agreed to this, right? Everyone looked at me. Mun immediately answers for me. We already discussed it. I looked at him. When? The atmosphere changed instantly. Mun frowned. Linh, I asked again. I'm serious. When exactly did we discuss it? Miss Han put down her glass. Today is supposed to be a happy occasion. Don't ruin the mood. I looked at her. I just want to confirm one thing. What? You said the house has already been transferred to you, correct? She smiled. Yes. And Mun said the same thing. Mun exhaled sharply. Yes. I nodded. Good. I opened my bag. Then I placed the brown envelope on the table. I brought a housewarming gift too. Miss Han stared at the envelope. Her smile began to stiffen. I pulled out a copy of the property certificate. I placed it in the middle of the table. This is the current legal documents for the house. Mun didn't move. I pushed his toward him. Read the owner's name. He looked down. I watched the color drains from his face. Miss Han snatched the papers from him. She stared at it for several seconds. Then she said, "This is outdated." I asked, "What exactly is outdated?" "Min already filled the transfer." I nodded. "Yes, he did submit an application." Min suddenly stood up. "Lin, that's enough." I turned to him. "No." I pulled out another sheet of paper. "This is the document you used to claim that my father gave the house to us 2 years ago." I played it on the table. "It has my father's signature." The room went silent. I looked directly at Min. "There's just one problem." I paused. "My father never signed it." No one spoke for several seconds. Miss Han spoke first. "Who exactly are you accusing?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Min turned his head, and this was the second trick. The one he truly wasn't prepared for. I walked over and opened the door. My father was standing outside. Beside him were Mr. Kai, the lawyer, and behind them stood Tong, Min's cousin, the man Min had hired to handle the paperwork. The moment Min saw Tong, his head went completely wide. Tong walked into the living room. No one said a word. About a week earlier, Mr. Kai has chased the person had been Min prepare the document. It was Tong. Tong was a real estate broker. He has no legal authority to process the kind of transfer Min thought he could, but he knew people who provide outside document services. When Tong realized the paperwork might involve a forged nature, he panicked, and he handed over every message exchange between him and Min. I opened my phone. "Do you want me to read them?" Min said nothing. I read the first message. Min had written, "Just make the file so that Lin's father's already engaged the hell to us before." The second message said, "Lin will know. She never checked anything." I heard someone in the room inhale sharply, but I wasn't finished. I scrolled down. There was another message. The one that hurt me more than everything else. Min has written, "Once the house is transferred to Mom, if we ever divorce, there will be less to divide." I lowered the phone, then I looked at my husband. 6 years. I had slept beside that man every night, taken care of him when he was sick, saved money with him to build that house, and while I was lying in a hospital bed, he has already been thinking about divorce. Not just divorce. He wanted to make sure I walked away from the marriage with as little as possible. Min says, "It's not what you think." I asked, "Then what am I supposed to think?" "I was just angry when I said that." "You were angry, so you forget documents?" "I didn't forget anything." Min pointed at Tong. "He did." Tong immediately replied, "You gave me the sample signature." The entire room went dead silent. Min turned toward Tong. "If blood could kill, Tong probably wouldn't have remained standing." Miss Han started crying. "But what's the exact reason? Why would my son do something like this?" Instead, she turned to me. "Lin, you're still husband and wife. Are you really going to send your husband to prison?" I looked at her. That question told me everything. She didn't care what Min had done. She only cared whether the consequence would reach her son. I said, "I haven't done anything to him. I point to the document. He did this to himself. Then my father stepped forward. He placed another stack of paper on the table. He was the calmest person in the room that day. He looked at me. Do you remember what I told you when this house was being built? Man remained silent. My father continued. I told you, Paul, that you could live here, and when the time arrives, I would transfer it to Linh. Man looked up. To Linh? Yes, that was something even I hadn't known. 3 months earlier, before any of this happened, my father has already begun preparing the documents to give the land use rights and how it could still live to me. He planned to give it to me as a birthday present. But because some of the legal procedure wasn't finished yet, he hadn't told me. That was why he still held every original document. And it was also why my plans were almost impossible to complete if the authorities properly reviewed the application. My father looked at him. You thought I hadn't transferred the property because I forgot? He paused. I didn't forget. I was watching to see how the man living in my daughter's house would treat her. I turned towards my father. That was the first moment that evenings when I almost cried, not because of the house, but because I realized he had seen the thing I had spent years refusing to see. Man began losing his control. He argued that some of the monies used to build the house had come from him. That was true, and my father admits it immediately. Mr. Kai explained that my actual financial contribution would be properly accounted for during the divisions of assets in our divorce. No one was trying to steal his money, but contributing his money toward construction and forging documents to transfer ownership were two completely different matters. Man has nothing left to say. Miss Hunt still tried to salvage the situation. She said, the house still belongs to someone in the house. Why bring the law into this? I looked at her. 3 days ago, you told me to pack my thing and leave. She fell silent. Was I family then? No one's defend her anymore. One aunt stood up and said she needs to leave. Then an uncle, one by one, everyone began working out. The party Mr. Hunt has organized to celebrate her victory ends in less than 10 minutes. The white potters were never opened. When only a few people remained, Man put me into the kitchen. He closed the door behind us. What do you want? That's where the first thing he asked. Not I'm sorry, not I was wrong, but what do you want? I said, a divorce. Man's face hardened. You're going to throw away 6 years of marriage over this? I looked at him for a long moment. No. You threw it away when you waited for your wife to be in the hospital so you could try to take the house. He said nothing. I continued. I'm just the last person to finish admit I already broken. Man softened his voice. He said he has been under pressure because of his mother's death. He said his mother has sacrificed her whole life for him. He said he only wanted to make sure he had somewhere secure to live. I asked, then why didn't you talk to me? He had no answer. And why did your message mention divorce? This time, Min had nothing left to say. I opened the kitchen door. Before walking out, I turned back. You thought I never check anything. You were right. I trust you. I look at him, but I don't anymore. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. I also hands-on evidence relating to the forged documents to my lawyer. What happened afterward took several months. I'm not going to pretend it's unfolded perfectly. The police didn't storm into the house during the party. No one's were handcuffed in front of the relatives. Realize it rarely dramatic in exactly that way. But the consequences came more slowly, and they hurt more. The property transfer applications were completely suspended. The documents so inside of forgeries were referred for registration. Tong cooperates and hands over every message, digital file, and communications record he has with Mun. Mun companies eventually found out as well. Not because I condoms. One of the relatives who attended the party worked with one of the company's business partners. Word spread. Mun wasn't immediately fined, but he was removed from his management position while the company reviews the situation and the potential damage to his professional reputation. Miss Han's failed investment couldn't be saved either. She eventually has to sell a small apartment he has been renting out to cover part of her debt. And the more ironic part, if she had simply told us from the beginning that she were in financial trouble, my father has actually said he would have been willing to lend her money at a clear term. But she didn't want a loan. She wants the help. And that risk cost her far more than what she has tried to take. About 4 months later, the transfer of the house from my father to me was finally complete. The day I received the new ownership document, I wasn't as happy as I thought I would be. I simply sat alone in the living room. The house is quiet. The chairman used to sit in were gone. Among all of his belongings has been removed. A pale rectangle still remained on the wall where our wedding photo used to hang. I stared at it for a long time. Then I plucked out another picture. It was a photo of my parents standing in the front of the house when its construction has just been complete. My father was holding a shovel. My father was smiling, and I was standing between them, my clothes covered in paint and dirt. I hung it exactly where the wedding photo used to be. Outside, the starfruit tree my father has planted has grown almost as high as the second floor balcony. I used to think my victory would keep in the house, but after everything that happened, I realized the house was only a very small part of it. What I had really taken back was the right to decide who were allowed to remain in my life. One thought I was weak because I trusted him. His mother thought my silence meant I didn't know anything. They were both wrong. Some people only understand the value of kindness after they take advantage of it for a very last time. And some door, once you lock them from the inside, not everyone who once has the keys deserve to work through them again.